Today, October 12th, I am 5 feet tall. My whole name is Jacob Wetterling. My favorite food is steak. My favorite color is blue.
This was the last known sighting of 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling. It was recorded on October 22, 1989, just 10 days before he disappeared. One of the largest searches in American history was conducted to find him, but nothing came of it until 27 years later. 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling lived with his mother Patty, father Jerry, and 3 siblings, Amy, Trevor, and Carmen. On the morning of October 22, 1989, Jacob went fishing with his father. In the afternoon, they returned home to watch the Vikings game. It was a family tradition for them. That evening, Jacob's parents were invited to a friend's house for dinner. Patty and Jerry thought they could leave their children at home while they went to this dinner 25 minutes away from home. In the middle of dinner, they received a phone call. It was Trevor. They were bored and wanted to rent a movie to watch. So he asked permission to go to the store with their neighbor Aaron and his brother Jacob. The store was actually close to their house with a few houses and farmland in between, but their mother wouldn't let them go because it was getting dark. "Find something else," she said. But when they called again a few minutes later, she made the decision that would be the biggest regret of her life and let them go on the condition that they take their flashlights and Aaron would come with them. In fact, the town of St. Joseph, where the family lived, was a very quiet and peaceful place. The mother's only concern was the cars that she thought might see them in the dark. After about 45 minutes, the landlord who had invited them for dinner came to them and told them to come home immediately. Patty and Jerry were horrified when he told them that someone had kidnapped Jacob. They went home in a panic and found Trevor and Aaron in a state of shock. Trevor was very excited, and Aaron was hiding in the corner and biting his nails. They had witnessed something terrible. With tears in their eyes, the boys told what had happened. After buying a movie at the store, Jacob, Trevor, and Aaron started to ride their bikes home. But that's when Aaron heard a noise in the tall grass by the side of the road. A masked man appeared out of nowhere and threatened the boys with a gun, forcing them to get off their bikes. At first they thought he was just a schoolboy playing an ugly prank on them, but he was so scary that they soon realized that the situation was very serious. He told them to put down their flashlights and get down on the ground, or he would shoot. The 3 of them did as he said. First he asked Trevor how old he was. When he said he was 13, he told him to get up and run as fast as he could or he would shoot him. So Trevor did. Then he repeated the same thing to Aaron. Soon Trevor and Aaron were running together in fear, expecting Jacob to come after them, but he wasn't. They took refuge in the nearest house and called for help in a panic. The Wetterling family was desperate and distraught. The 2 children told the police every detail they could remember. One of the largest search efforts in American history was launched to find Jacob. Thousands of people, with the support of television channels, searched everywhere for weeks to find 11-year-old Jacob, but to no avail. As hopes were about to be dashed, another victim came forward and said his experience was similar to Jacob's. On January 13, 1989, 9 months before Jacob's disappearance, 12-year-old Jared Shale was on his way home after a trip with friends. It was still dark. A car pulled up next to him, and a man pointed a gun at him, threatened him, and told him to get in the car. Jared obeyed the man's orders, doing his best to stay alive. Along the way, he tried to examine the car and the surroundings. He noticed that there was a police radio in the car. After a while, the man blindfolded him, suspicious of the way he was looking around. But Jared tried to remember every turn. After about 15 minutes of driving, the man turned onto a gravel road, stopped the car, and frightened Jared by telling him not to tell anyone what had happened or he would come and find him again. He told him to run away without looking back and that he would shoot him if he stopped. Jared shared every detail he could remember with the police. He described wearing camouflage clothes, the radio in the car, and the way he spoke. He even tried to describe their route to the police by closing his eyes behind the 2 dams. 3 days after Jared's abduction, police had identified a possible suspect. The suspect, Heinrich, was a former member of the National Guard and had a criminal record for burglary. He was seen to have a police radio in his car, just as Jared had described. The fact that he was lined up next to similar people for identification made Jared narrow it down to 2 people. He said that the attacker was one of those 2, and indeed one of those 2 was Danny Heinrich. But the police could not press charges because the boy could not make a positive identification. Jared also worked with the FBI when Jacob disappeared 9 months later. Danny couldn't prove where Jacob was the night he was abducted, and moreover, the footprints at the scene matched his boots. This led the police to issue a search warrant. At Heinrich's house, they found black boots, camouflage pants, and even photos of some of the boys. Danny Heinrich was arrested in February 1990, but they had no evidence to convict him. Saying that confessing was the only way out, FBI experts entered the interrogations with thick files, as if they had too much evidence, and tried to corner him. In the end, the district attorney decided there was not enough evidence and Heinrich was released. The Wetterling family never gave up hope of finding their son. For years, they made efforts to keep the issue on the agenda. Years later, with the support of social media, the mother Patty tried to prevent her son from being forgotten. Exactly 20 years after the incident, a blogger made a discovery that would change everything. After seeing Jacob's family's desperate search for help, a woman named Joey Baker decided to take matters into her own hands and spent years trying to find the perpetrator of what happened to Jacob and Jared. Finally, in 2013, she found a newspaper article that changed everything. Starting in 1986, there had been a series of attacks on boys in Painesville, but the perpetrator had never been found. She couldn't understand how the police had failed to catch such a similarity. After the subject came up, the case was reopened. With the advances in technology, Heinrich's DNA samples were compared with those found on the clothes Jared was wearing on the night of the crime, and an exact match was found. Unfortunately, even though he was found guilty, it was too late. The statute of limitations had expired and Danny Heinrich could not be prosecuted. But this led to a new search warrant being issued for his home in 2015. There was no trace of Jacob, but sexually explicit videos of children were found, which could lead to Heinrich's imprisonment. The police were sure that Heinrich was the one who had kidnapped Jacob, but they could not accuse him of anything except his confession. All the family wanted was to find out what had really happened to their son. With the 27-year-old mother's agreement, prosecutor Danny Heinrich offered a deal. If Jacob A. told what he had done, he was guaranteed that he would never be prosecuted for the crime. Heinrich accepted the deal, and that night Trevor intercepted Jacob and Aaron and freed them, leaving Jacob alone. But when he saw the lights of a passing police car, he panicked and killed him. He said he buried Jacob's lifeless body in a park in the center of the city and gave a location. 27 years later, a funeral was held for Jacob. His parents were finally able to say goodbye to their son with a speech that moved everyone to tears. Heinrich, on the other hand, received no punishment for the crime as part of the deal, only a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison for the footage found in his home. After 7 years in prison, Heinrich will be released in 13 years at the age of 70. To keep his name alive, Jacob's family founded the Jacob Wetterling Foundation, which aims to help the families of missing children. Patty Wetterling, who can best understand what they are going through, has been appointed chairman of the board of directors. See you in the new videos. Goodbye.